was November 2008 when Gay Talk Radio was started. It is an effort to enlighten, empower, and strengthen those in our LGBTQIA family. We enlighten those in our family who wish to keep informed. We empower family members to be the best they can be, and we strengthen those in need of being lifted up. Our existence has saved and changed lives. Indeed, we have made a difference. We are very proud of having been part of making a difference in our LGBTQIA community. We thank all of you for your continued support and good tidings. In return, we wish the same for you and yours. We continue to provide quality content on Gay Talk Radio, content that makes a difference in people's lives. Unfortunately, our economy has put us all in an uncomfortable place, including Gay Talk Radio. For this reason, we are having a pledge drive this week and hope that those who can will help Gay Talk Radio continue our community outreach. Although we are asking for your help, we are also providing you with some wonderful moments from our past, some moments which prove the extent of our impact on our community. We hope you enjoy the extraordinary content we will provide this week, and thank you for spending some of your time with us on Gay Talk Radio. If you can, please help keep Gay Talk Radio alive and well. Help us help our community. Yeah, we started Gay Talk Radio back in November of 2008. Thank you for attending the Gay Talk Radio Pledge Drive. Thank you for spending some of your time with us on With the Clips.
Hello.
One of the first people I met when I originally started Gay Talk Radio over on the Blog Talk Radio system. We are no longer on that system, but that's where we got our start. And there was a lot of other hosts there, and a few of them that were gay, and we made some friends over there, and Kevin was one of them. There was a time when both Kevin and I were asked to be a guest on a show called Real Talk, Real Woman. And the show was about World AIDS Day. It was in December of 2008 when this show aired. And I thought I'd share with you the portion of that show where Kevin and I spoke up on the issues of AIDS and whatnot. I hope you enjoy the clip.
Welcome to Real Talk, Real Woman. I'm your host, Jax, and tonight's show will discuss the importance of World AIDS Day. This special day is observed every year on December 1st. The World Health Organization established World AIDS Day back in 1988. World AIDS Day provides governments, national AIDS programs, and faith organizations and community organizations and individuals with the opportunity to raise awareness and focus attention on global AIDS epidemic. I am honored to have special guests on the show tonight to discuss HIV and AIDS, and I'm going to go straight to the line. Welcome to the show. Who's on the line? Please say your name.
Oh, this is Tom here.
Welcome, Tom. Glad to have you on the show. 602,
Thank you,
welcome to the show. Who's on the line?
This is Kevin.
Kevin, welcome to the show. I'm honored to have you gentlemen here to discuss World AIDS Day. I also want to start off by having you introduce your show, because both of you host shows on BTR. So, Kevin, will you please start off explaining what does a gay life coach do and what's your purpose of your show?
Well, I'll tell you, the name that I use for the show is actually a play on words, because I am gay, I am a life coach, but what I do is coach gay life issues. And what my show does is it helps, really, we bring a lot of the issues of internal arguments and discussions and just kind of help lift people up, not necessarily on always gay issues, but on all issues of life. And that's really what my show's about.
Powerful show, very needed for everybody. Tom?
My show is called Gay Talk on Blog Talk Radio, and I do a Monday through Friday show in the mornings. It's basically current events and news related to the LGBTQIA community, and I also do a Sunday 2-hour show where I feature guests and open mic and talk about whatever.
Yes, whatever. And I like that I've been to both of your gentlemen's shows, and they've been very powerful shows because I like how they inspire people and they have a focus. And you really do talk about healing and helping, and I want to deal with this issue of HIV/AIDS tonight because I would like to know, as we heard Veronica's story at the start of the show, why there's still such a stigma attached to HIV and AIDS. Kevin, you could take it first.
Oh, I was going to toss it to Tom, let him start, actually.
Okay, Tom. Don't be shy.
I was hoping Kevin was going to start myself.
I'll be more than happy. I'll be more than happy to. The problem is I tend to take the stage first before other people, and I like to give other people the opportunity to show themselves, and that's a beautiful thing. So, if you'd like, Tom, go ahead. If not, I'll start.
Go ahead,
it's
Kevin.
A beautiful thing.
Yeah, I was just going to. I'm going to more reply to what's being said rather than just start it out.
The stigma of AIDS is still so prevalent because of the misconception of how it is passed, first off, and how deadly it is. And it is so deep rooted within religious areas, and I'm just going to say certain churches, not all churches, but it's still very deep rooted into an understanding of it being a gay disease.
Right.
And in the United States, gay cancer, which is not the case throughout the world, it's not the way it's felt, but the stigma in this country, a lot of it has to do with really misconceptions of it completely.
Yes, still holding on to fears and prejudice still. Tom, would you like to add to that?
Oh, yeah, I mean, Kevin always sums it up so good. It's always hard, to come up with anything better, so I'm not even going to try. I'll just add to it,
Why do you think I try to throw other people out there?
I know!
All kidding aside, AIDS is serious. And it's so much hitting the younger generation and the minorities nowadays because a lot of people are thinking of it like it's like diabetes, like it's a manageable disease.
Right.
They don't look at it so much like it's a death sentence. And that's a good thing. Anyone who contracts, HIV should never give up.
Right.
That's definitely not what I'm saying. It's something that you want to fight for, and you want to fight for your life as hard as you can. And there's so much positiveness out there that people are getting through alternate therapies. I wish it wasn't with us. And I read an article recently that said maybe in as soon as 10 years it won't be with us anymore. About a new virus that's being tested out of Canada, just starting clinical trials right now as we speak. And a vaccine, I should say, not a virus. They developed this new vaccine from the actual virus. But I'll let you continue on. I just don't want to sit here and ramble on about it. I could talk all night on this subject.
And and this is an important subject to talk about because it seems like with all the advancements in education and the efforts and programs out there to educate people about HIV and AIDS, it's still a situation where people are taking it lightly. I mean, maybe we need a more aggressive approach to just bring home a more serious message that, look, this is a life or death situation, especially to our young people what do you think we could do differently in reaching out and encouraging people to get tested? Because there's so many that are still out there that are not even aware that they are HIV positive. Kevin?
You know, the interesting thing about that is to get them out of the fear of it, first off. Because when you ask the younger generation today, you know, even high school kids, you know, have they ever gotten tested? No. Why? Because I can't get it, 1. 2, because if I am, then everybody's going to think I'm gay. 3, because if I am, no one will talk to me again. So the biggest thing is getting everyone to understand that there's nothing to be afraid of, and the sooner you know, the better off you are. I mean, even today, people that are found positive, very deep into it, you know, where your load counts aren't right or different things aren't there, and you're on the verge of becoming what they call full-blown AIDS. You can still turn yourself around, but it's a much harder path, much more painful path. The earlier you know, the less pain and aggravation you go with.
And you can extend
so
your
it's
life.
really it's really getting the fear out of everybody and stop being afraid of it, first off, and second, stop judging the people that are.
I'm glad that you mentioned that judgment, because I opened up with Veronica's story, and they mentioned that after she was interviewed, she lost her job. She got evicted from her home, and her children had to be removed from the school they were in. We have to really get rid of the fear. But why do you think places like churches, who could be so beneficial, are still fearful to offer education about HIV and AIDS?
Because of the big belief of it being a sexually transmitted disease. And the biggest they preach is it's sexually transmitted. Since you should only have sex when you're married and be abstinent until that point, then it's not something that should be really dealt with deeply within their church.
So people go uneducated.
So they go uneducated because of the church's because of the church's stance on moral values.
Moral values. Tom?
Yeah, a couple really good points, hit on here in this little volley is the abstinence. Abstinence kills. That's just a totally ludicrous way to handle things. Very few people are truly going to abstain. So to try to follow through with that stuff is just craziness. And the fear thing is real good. People need to remember with any disease, the sooner you catch it, the better your chances are to living longer and suffering less. In Florida, there was a recent article that came out about the numbers of people that are unknowingly infecting others because they don't know they're infected. The HIV test needs to become, when you get your yearly physical, if you're sexually active, you should have your test at least once every 6 months. Because it can be up to a 6 months delay, before you're actually going to test positive. So if you're sexually active, you should get tested every 6 months. If you're not sexually active, you should still get tested once a year when you have your annual physical, just to be sure. And if not for yourself, you need to think about others, because it's possible that you could pass this on to somebody else. And if you don't care enough about yourself, you need to care enough about your fellow human beings that you don't want to pass this possible death sentence onto them.
You don't. And it's so many people who feel like, I don't have to worry, I'm married, or I'm in a committed relationship, or they think they're in a committed relationship, or, they're still thinking, no, that's just a down low disease or a gay disease. What would you say to someone who's still thinking, it can never happen to me?
I'm sorry you live in 1970? The truth of the matter is this: yes, if I were to contract it today from somebody that I were to be with, not that I have, and that's a whole other subject, but if I were to contract it today, I could possibly not know it for 6 months. But here's the thing that's really devastating about this. If you don't find out, it can incubate within your system. The incubation period can be as far as 10 years. it may not show itself for 10 years in your system. You will know that you have it, but the symptoms that would tell you may not show for 10 years. If you don't mind, I'll tell you a story about a young man.
Yes.
He contracted it, never got tested, because he was afraid of getting tested. He was afraid of hearing the results. He went into the hospital just after Christmas, was diagnosed with pneumocystis carni pneumonia, which is something that's within your body anyway. And this virus killed his immune system to the point where it came forward. Within 1.5 years, he was dead.
1.5 years.
1.5 years. Because the other thing that doesn't really get understood much is that the more you worry and stress yourself about it, the worse it'll get.
Yeah. Because it wears down your immune system.
That's correct.
Ooh, thank you for sharing that story, because I am so close to this issue because of my personal story. I have a best friend who was diagnosed with HIV in '97, and now he's living with AIDS. And 2 weeks ago, I got a text from him letting me know that he went into renal failure, which means his kidney shut down. And
renal failure, yeah.
Right, renal failure due to complications from AIDS. And it's real. The suffering and pain is real. And people need to take it seriously. They really need to get educated and not be afraid to get tested. Tom, would you like to add to that?
No, it's really not. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to belabor the personal stories here. I have a few of my own, but I don't need to go into that.
It comes to the point with people, just like Tom said, if you don't care about yourself enough to get checked like that, you want to care about not only the people that you may hook up with, as the term likes to be used today, or the friends. The ones that you would actually lay your life down for are the ones that are going to be suffering watching you go through what you're going to go through.
Thank you for sharing that. I want to go to the line because this show is open to those who want to share their stories or testimonies or really encourage people to get tested. The show number is 646-716-7254, 646-716-7254. Welcome to the show, 803. Who's on the line?
This is Lyric. How you doing?
Hi, Lyric. Thank you for calling the show. What would you like to say?
Well, I have a personal story myself to tell with regards to this. I actually have two brothers, one who is currently dying of AIDS and the other who died of AIDS about 2 years ago. I sat there in the hospital with him for like 2 months, just kind of watching him deteriorate away, and now it's like I'm going through this same cycle again with this other brother. So, I try in every instance that I can to get out there and make people aware and just remind them and let them know how important it is to just really, really be careful. Please be careful.
It's important to be careful, and especially if you know you're so sexually active with different people. It's not just happening to one type of person. It's worldwide. We're fighting this epidemic of AIDS worldwide. Children are dying from this, as you heard from Veronica's story. When you first got the news, Lyric, how did you wrap your head around it? How were you helping yourself? Because not only does it affect the people you love, it has effects on you, too, being a person to support them.
I think at first it was kind of shunned, nobody wanted to talk about it.
Right.
They were embarrassed and this and that and the other, and then it just kind of became common knowledge and everybody just kind of embraced it. But you do run into those people that are scared to come around you because they think it's in the air and all of this. And you really just have to make yourself knowledgeable on, ways of contracting it and just they need love too.
They do.
I just want to make, they need love too, you guys. I mean, don't make them feel like they are any more of an outcast like that they feel themselves. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I feel you on that, because that was one of the things when my best friend came out to me, and he was slow with it, because there's still that stigma, and there are some people who hold in their fear and they cut their relationships with you, and that's the worst thing you could do to someone that's already going through this. And I let him know, I'm not going to change. What I love about you is not going to change because you have this AIDS. It's a lot of people going around with diseases, cancer, diabetes. They need the same support, those who are HIV positive and AIDS. And I just let him know that I was going to be there. And it was sad to be there and watch him deal with other relationships that were not as strong, because at that time, when they're at their lowest, they need you to pray for them. They need you to support them. They need you to encourage them. And you said you were in the hospital for 2 months?
2.5 months. I mean, there were times where the nurse would actually call me, you got to come down here because he's, this and that and the other. So I'd have to go and just spend the night there and then just get up and go to work the next morning and then come right back that evening,
Right.
because, he responded to me more so than everybody else. And so it was tough. It was tough. And it's like at that very end, my mom and I were there. They called us down there. And he just refused to go until we left. And as soon as we left, is when he went. So, I mean, it's just heart-wrenching, you guys. I mean, it really, really is. But I cannot stress enough, every word of encouragement, every word of hope that you give them is important. It's very important.
It is very, very important. And as you're talking, I talk about the healthcare medicine situation, because it's so many pills he has to take every day just to stay alive. And there would be times where he had to decide between medicine and food. Ooh, Kevin, how do you feel about this whole situation with health?
Yeah.
Okay, I know. This is crazy.
Let me tell you, I'm going to tell you, there was a bill passed in Congress called the Ryan White Act. That act was reduced in funding, thank you to our wonderful president. And what that act was to do was to assist people that could not afford their medicine. Understand, HIV-positive people can spend, and on average spend, $1,500 a month on their medicine. This act was done in response to Ryan White to make sure people could get their medicine. Mr. Bush decides to reduce the funding. And actually, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong here, Tom, I think you know this better than me, it's actually possibly going to go away completely.
What? Wow. And for those who are listening, in your state, it's probably ADAPT program, AIDS Drug Assistance Program, that helps you get discounted drugs.
Right. Well, the Ryan White Act is a federal, and it's directive to the states. But it's, from my understanding, it was about to expire, and he signed it back in with reduced funding.
With reduced funding.
Which means less people were going to receive their medicine. More people were going to die.
That is sad.
See, we have to remember something, guys. Yeah. No matter what side of the fence we play on, it's more manly to wrap it than it is to leave it unwrapped.
Right.
It's more romantic to tell your partner, this I'm doing for you, than it is to not do it at all.
That's right. Lay down with a woman that you love enough that you wouldn't risk her life.
That's right.
Tom, I want to bring you back in.
Oh.
What, Kevin, you got more to say?
No. I thought you were there.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I'm here.
What do you have to say about that? The program being expired that could save lives.
I hadn't heard that, and I had heard about the reduced funding, but I don't know anything about whether it's going to be, hopefully with Obama in there, that's that's not going to happen. Hopefully it'll get funding raised up again. But, you know, we have to think about a couple things here when it comes to the medicine.
Okay.
Because there's several school of thoughts on this. You know, if a person actually has an illness affecting, because there's many opportunistic diseases that can strike you when you become HIV positive or you have full-blown AIDS. And treating those diseases, the opportunistic diseases that jump on you is a fine thing. But there's lots of people out there that are healthy that will tell you that they're not taking any medications at all, and they're controlling it with diet and exercise. And I've heard some great stories from that side of the fence, rather than people that just wantonly take, here's a bunch of medicines, you got HIV, here's a bunch of when there's nothing wrong with you, really. But they're actually healing themselves, or not healing themselves, but they're keeping themselves more healthy by not taking the medications and just exercising and dieting correctly, eating the right foods, and maybe using some homeopathic stuff, you know, and instead of just taking a cocktail of drugs just because the doctor tells you to take these, you know, when they really don't have an opportunistic infection at that time. I know, Kevin, you want to chime in. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to add to that, and I was kind of hoping someone else would throw that on there before I did, just because I always go into the away from drug. I don't take drugs when I have a headache.
Right.
So there are a ton of ways. That doesn't take away from saying, Doc, I'm really sick. How can you help me now? But don't rely solely on science. And Tom, I'll tell you, they do heal themselves, because you said it correctly the first time. They do heal themselves. Whether it be to the point that they become what's known as undetectable. And undetectable means technically you don't have it anymore. And that can happen through science, yes, but not solely through science. There are some people that have been able to go to the undetectable level through strict medical practices. Not very many. Most of them have done it with a mixture of science and holistic medicine and really meditation and a lot of stress control. And there's been a lot of things that actually help that.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think there's not more funding or even focused funding in place to offer that alternative to medication?
The easy answer to that is the drug lobby in Washington.
Exactly.
And one of the things that's really sad is on this show, if you don't ignore your doctor, always include science, you can be sued. Even on Blog Talk Radio.
Wow.
But the biggest thing is the drug lobby in Washington is the one that keeps that down.
What can people do when it comes to making sure their representative truly represents the issues that are close to their heart, and especially an issue like this? Because I want to bring in the California Proposition 8 and why you think that was rejected. Because if people have a union that's recognized as a marriage, they could have health benefits that would help them with their medication. Why do you think that was rejected?
Go ahead, Tom.
Man, you're asking some questions that could take up your whole show and more. Let me say here before I get too far into any of this that my heart goes out to Lyric and also to you, Jack. And I want to offer y'all all the strength I can throw your direction.
Thank you.
Because you're dealing this daily and right now, and my dealing with this is in the past. It's behind me. I've healed a lot over it, but you guys are on the front lines, and I hope you have a lot of strength, and I think it's wonderful that you're being there and being supportive to your loved ones that are dealing with this. As far as Proposition 8, I'm going to do like Kevin did a minute ago and say the easy answer was that got passed primarily because of the support of religion and the biased teachings of religion.
But meanwhile, while we debate all of that, people are dying.
That's right.
And that
there's.
Yes, go ahead, Kevin.
I was going to say there's where the difficulty comes, and
right.
I say that because what happens, religion doesn't put that into perspective. They don't put that in their commercials. They don't talk about that because that puts what's known as the human element on it. They get rid of the human element. They could not come to you, Jax, or Lyric, and preach the same thing with the understanding that you have and get away with it.
That's right.
That is
so, you know, the honest-to-God thing is people don't realize the ultimate effects of those things. At the same time, they don't care.
How can you not care?
Personal agenda.
Especially if you're religious.
Yeah. And, you know, and the fair thing to say on that, because I've been corrected many times, is not all religions are that way.
Right.
A select few. But the select few are the noisy ones.
But what do you tell a child if you're a parent that has passed that on to your child? How do you tell that child all of this? They don't understand the politics behind people's beliefs. They don't understand the politics behind money. How do you explain that to a child?
I don't know if you can. Sometimes it's better to leave some information out. Sometimes it's better to put that child on YouTube and ask that question. It's a tough one to answer.
Yes.
Because I could account for the numerous people in my life that I've lost. I could account for the numerous people I've worked with in my practice that are dealing with the 6 months of not knowing.
Right.
You know, there are a lot of people in this world that are affected by this. And let me change that. Everyone in the world is affected by this.
Thank you for changing it.
And the ones, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. You finish.
I was going to say, and the ones with the suits and ties that feel they're higher than everyone else are the ones that keep the human element out of it.
The ones that rather make money off of it.
Right. You can't make money when you throw the human element there.
Exactly. Ooh, that's a strong point. Because you're right. It's not just, you know, they neglect the people around the people who are suffering, what they're feeling and dealing with. It takes its toll on everyone. Tom, what do you have to say?
Yeah, it's the money thing really gets to me. You know, I'm, you know, often have been, I guess, accused of being part of these conspiracy theorist people. You know, I've often wondered, you know, as much money as these drug companies spend developing a drug, who's to say if they came out with a cure tomorrow, a magic pill, that we would ever hear about it? You know, before they made back their profit margin that they had to make off of the previous drugs they have already spent time developing. You know, and it's I don't know if anyone here has ever seen the movie And the Band Plays On. It's a wonderful movie.
Beautiful movie. Beautiful movie.
I highly recommend that, and I have a clip on my video blog over on YouTube that is from that movie, and they're having a discussion when it was still called GRID back at that point. They didn't have a test for HIV available at that point, but they had discovered that a large amount of HIV-positive people were also testing positive for one of the forms of hepatitis. So they offered they offered a test of testing for hepatitis. And, of course, all the people that managed the blood, because all the hemophiliacs were getting infected like crazy at that time, and they were looking for a solution to that. And it was Matthew Modine, I think, that played the part. And he got so upset with them because they didn't want to spend the money on the hepatitis test because it wasn't 100% for sure. You know, it was only like 80% for sure. And that wasn't good enough for them. And so he stood up and in a rant, he yelled at them, well, you know, when the amount of money that you're spending on lawsuits from people dying from the blood that you're giving these hemophiliacs, exceeds, you know, your profit margin, and you want to do this test, let us know. And where do we draw the line here? How many dead people do we have to have before, you know, we're going to do something about this? Basically what he was getting to. It's just that's the very point he was making. And that's the bottom line here, that people seem to forget. We're talking about humans. We're not talking about dollars, and we're not talking about profit margins or anything. We're talking about human life, you know, and the humanity of it is somehow lost somewhere along the lines, and that needs to be thrown in the trash can.
You're right. It needs to be. It needs to be. Another question I want to ask all of you who are on the panel. What if someone out there is aware of someone that is being irresponsible? They're positive, but they're still not having protected sex. Is there ever a good moment or a good time to out someone? How do you handle that?
How would you handle a murderer in your family that you know is going to go kill somebody tonight?
I'd take them to go see my brother.
Thank you.
See what the effects are. I would take them and let them meet him.
Because there's so many, of course, you know, with HIPAA and privacy laws and other things and other concerns, some people feel like they could be more liable if they tell on a certain person. What are you at liberty to tell the other person that that person is positive? What fine lines are there?
Legally, the only lines legally there are in different states in this country is that you can go to jail for different levels of whether it's, and I'm not 100% sure on this writing, I just know that there are some states you can go to jail for attempted murder, for sleeping with somebody and you're positive you know it and you do it unprotected and you don't tell them. I mean, there's laws for trying to force people with AIDS to say so, or that are HIV positive to say so. But at the point you really come to the question of outing this person to someone else, that's really very tough, because at what point do you put the responsibility of someone else's life in your hands and feel like it's important enough to save another life or keep another life from this situation, or the respect of your friend? It's a tough personal. That's one that's personal to every individual in the world.
Right.
You know, if it were me, then I'd be telling my friend, look, you better make sure you tell everybody, because if you don't, I will. And if that means I lose my friend, then I lose my friend, because the collective and the whole is more important.
That's right. Tom?
Yeah, I'm with Kevin on that one. You know, I wouldn't hesitate for a minute. If I knew someone was going around infecting others, I wouldn't have any problem telling the world. But you know, that's not gonna do it. You know, we each need to be responsible for our own lives. You know, I talked to some. I've mentioned this recently on my show. In fact, I think I mentioned it this morning. And you know, I've talked to some local young women around here. And I asked them, I said, do you carry a condom with you? And they looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, you know, what if the guy doesn't have one? You know, what are you going to do? You know, you might have a few drinks in you and you're having fun, you know, and you're going to go ahead and take that risk. You know, if the other person isn't going to be responsible, you need to be responsible for your own life. You know, so it's a two-sided coin there, you know. It takes two to tango.
But both of you could end up dying.
Exactly, but and it's really a big personal part as to how that affects your life and what chances you're willing to take within your life at that time. My big question I ask somebody is, how are you going to feel when you see that person fighting this disease and you know where they got it and you could have stopped it?
Exactly.
That's my biggest point.
Exactly, because I've had a conversation with an individual, and the attitude was like women and men are like apple and oranges. They didn't care that they were having sex, unprotected sex, with a married man who was going home to his wife, and his wife not knowing that her husband is having an affair with a man.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to taking steps to educate people and also to get them tested, we should really discuss in relationships, whether it's same sex or opposite sex, the importance of honesty.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Without a doubt, and understanding that what you do affects other individuals and could very possibly affect other individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to take responsibility for that. And the fact is, honesty and self-responsibility is one of the lowest things on the importance level of people today.
And that's what really disturbs me, is why we still play Russian roulette with our lives and the lives of others. This is such a serious issue. We're talking an epidemic here. We're talking worldwide. For something that...
We're talking about something that's about to annihilate a continent.
Yes. That's right. And for something to just take a few moments to precaution, or, the other option to abstain. I know, Tom, how you feel about that, but whatever it takes to be protected.
Well, and the reality behind what Tom said is very true.
Mm-hmm.
The number of people that are going to withhold having that pleasure when it presents itself, no matter the age, is very small.
It's
so,
it's very small.
There's not,
It's very small, but we're not doing enough even in the schools to educate the children.
Mm-hmm.
We're not.
Of course not.
No,
we're not.
We're not even giving them anything. It's like sending a soldier out to war with no weapons.
It's like sending an attorney to court with no information. There are so many comparables to that. The bottom line is, so many parents don't want their kids to learn about sex in school, but they don't have enough guts to teach them about sex at home.
Right.
Where are they going to learn it?
Exactly. Go ahead, Larry.
I think they really need to try to make it very real for these kids.
Mm-hmm.
As far as bring people to the schools that have AIDS and talk to the kids and let them know, what the real issue is. Because it's almost like homelessness and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't see it and it's not right up in your face, you don't really think about it as much.
No.
So if they give them a very real reminder of what's out there, they'd at least think about it before they just throw themselves out there.
Let's ask this one question to everybody.
Yeah.
How many of you at 10 years old knew about sex because you learned it from your friends or somewhere else, and not from your parents, and not from responsible adults?
Yes.
That's a good question. And be honest with yourself about it, because especially for parents now, your parents now, you need to address that with your children. Because I can remember being 8 years old, and I came to my dad and I said, I heard at school that, you don't get pregnant if you stand up. And he was like, first of all, startled at 8-year-old, you're having that conversation, 8-year-olds. But yes, they're very young now today having these kind of conversations. And they're exposed to a lot more than what we were exposed to. But he sat me down. He pulled out a book, and he educated me because he wanted me to be informed with the right information. And I can honestly tell you, from having an open communication with my parents, that kept me from making a lot of mistakes that a lot of young people out here today are making. We have young people who are getting diagnosed with HIV. It's very real. Yes. You know, it's disturbing when you hear the statistics about that, especially in the African American community with our young teenage girls having a higher percentage of STDs.
You know, we all have to...
Go ahead, Kevin.
Oh, no. Go ahead, Tom.
No, that's one of the largest growing populations right now is the under 25-year-old minorities.
Yes.
And you know, it's and I'm sorry, I hate to keep bashing Bush, but this abstinence program. This abstinence program is trash, you know, and they're going to go out, they're going to do it. It don't matter how long have we been saying you're not supposed to have sex, and how long has everyone been ignoring that? You know, it's just, and they're doing it younger now than they ever were. So to sit there and tell them you're not supposed to have sex and not give them condoms because they're not supposed to be having sex, you're just turning a blind eye to, and you're making the problem worse.
That's right.
You know, and you could compare this to something, and it's a very, very interesting thing, how young girls and boys are on the Internet today talking about sex, and how many of those young ones end up in the hands of someone else that causes damage to your child. Now, take that, the child sexual thing, I've just totally missed the word because I was going to say pornography, but the whole child molestation thing is getting younger and younger because they're looking for answers and they have questions, but they can't go to mom and dad. And they're 7 years old on the Internet looking at who knows what. It's all out there.
It is.
So, I mean, wake up. Come on, people. And then ultimately wrap that thing.
There you go. I wish I had a hit rap song about that. Wrap it up.
There you go. Wrap that thing.
Well, before we close out, I want to give everyone on the panel an opportunity to tell everybody where they can contact you and get more information about your shows, because each and every one of you have beautiful, powerful shows. I want to thank you all for coming and talking on this issue. It's not an easy issue to talk about, of course not. You know, a lot of people are affected by it directly and some indirectly, and some out there, unfortunately, still don't know that they may have it. Lyrical, I want to start with you. Please tell everybody about your show and where they can listen to your show, your links.
Oh, okay. Our blog talk radio show is called Lyrical Disciples, and it is every second and fourth Sunday. We also have a new one starting up that's on Virtuous' site, which is United Faith, which touches upon the spiritual aspect of things. That's going to be a once-a-month thing, and I will let you guys know about that. Website, www.siteskins.net/lyrics, Blaine, and my MySpace, the extension is Lyrics Flow 1.
Flow 1. Thank you, Lyrics, for sharing your testimony.
You're welcome.
That I know it wasn't easy to do, but I'm very honored that you did it. And I really hope people will listen.
I appreciate you allowing, for us to have this forum to be able to discuss this, and I hope that it reaches somebody that it's meant to reach. So, thank you.
Thank you. Kevin?
Yes, ma'am.
It's your turn. Please tell the world about your powerful show.
I'm blogtalkradio.com/gay_life_coach every Thursday and Sunday. Thursdays at 8 p.m. Oh, no, 7 p.m. Anyway, it's on Thursdays, I think 7 p.m. East Coast time. And then on Sundays at 5 o'clock East Coast time. My website is lewislifecoaching.com, and you can email me there. Anybody can email me, Kevin@lewislifecoaching.com, and I will have conversations private with you for free. You don't have to pay me to do those. And that's it. You can just contact me there anytime you want.
Thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Because your knowledge has been empowering, and I really hope people listening to this show will listen and really make that effort to educate others. Thank you, Kevin.
It's my pleasure.
Mm-hmm. Tom, last but not least, please tell everybody about your show.
You're too kind, Jack. I do a Monday through Friday current events show, and I do an awful lot of news events about AIDS, and that's at 6 a.m. Pacific time. And I also do a Sunday show, a 2-hour show that starts at noon Pacific time. My Blog Talk Radio address is blogtalkradio.com/gaytalk. On that profile, you can find all my contact information. I even have a voicemail phone number you can contact me through. And on further down the page, I have links to my video blog where you can go see this clip I have over there from as the band plays on, plus lots of other clips I have over there. And I have a couple blogs, and there's links to those there as well. And anyone's welcome to contact me anytime as well, and I will be more than happy to help in any way I can.
Thank you, Tom. And you've helped a lot tonight by being on the show with the other wonderful people, the other guests, Kevin and Lyric. I appreciate your time and most importantly, the effort that you make with your shows to empower people and to educate people. Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome, and thank you, Jack, for having me, and thank you for having this show. It's a very important topic, and like Lyric said, I hope that we reach some people that needed to hear it.
I hope so, too. God bless you, Tom.
As you.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Lyric. I want to thank everyone who came by the show to support the show tonight. And most importantly, I want to send out special prayers to those who lost their battle with AIDS and to those who are living with AIDS and to the family and friends who are living with them. I pray for you. I pray for myself. I pray for my friends and family. And I pray for the guests on this show and their friends and family as well. So please take away from this show some encouragement, some education, and some will to fight. Because this is a battle that we still are dealing with, and it's very serious, and we need to protect our children. We need to educate them, and we need to stop all these other politics that are costing so many people their lives. So on that note, I want to encourage you to keep praying, keep pressing, and God bless. And I'm going out on a moment of silence for all those who lost their lives to AIDS.
Yeah, that was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful show. I think that was the only time I've ever been invited to be a guest on a show. I was kind of shocked. They caught me off guard. I didn't have a whole lot of preparation time. I mean, I think they let me know a day or two before the show. So it was kind of all off the top of my head. It was an honor and a pleasure to be there, and it was great to talk with those women. Oh, let's see. We've got some more stuff coming up for you. We're what we're going to do on this pledge week that we're having here. That's going to be Monday through Friday. We're going to start it at about 10 a.m. Pacific time. That's roughly about 1 p.m. Eastern time. And we're going to try to work our way up from the beginning up until now and cover a lot of bits and pieces between then and now. As you know, we're a talk show, so we get a lot of calls from people. And it was shortly after this show, in fact, just a few days after this show that you just heard, where we had Jewel of the South, who is a psychic that has a show of her own, and she actually called in and came out on our show, and it was wow. It was a wow moment, and check it out. That's right now. Just check it out. You got to hear it.
601, you're on the air.
Hey, it's Jewel of the South.
Hey, Jewel, how are you?
I'm all right this morning. How are you?
Oh, man, I just crawled out of bed like 10 minutes before the show. I'm doing all I can to get my coffee down my throat.
I was up since about 5 o'clock this morning, and not that I wanted to be, but I was. And I came in here. I didn't know that you had a show, Ashley, and then I saw Charm was going to be on. I missed that. Well, I have a lupus flare right now, so I missed a lot of shows, including my own. I had to cancel them. But anyway, I hope that went well. And then in here with this interesting conversation, and I haven't even come out with GTR yet, but I guess I'm going to be now. That's fine with me. I don't care. As long as, the people that live around me in Mississippi don't hear it. This is a dangerous place to be out over here. These people are crazy.
Yeah, I grew up
scary.
in San Antonio.
San Antonio, well, you know what? I was born in San Diego. My dad was in the military, too, so I understand where you were coming from. But I was brought up in Texas, where my mom was from. And Texas really is very eclectic now. They really don't care. I mean, they really don't. They're very, liberal there, where I'm from anyway, Dallas-Fort Worth. And here in Mississippi, it's like walking back into a cave and closing the door behind you. It sucks. I hate it. It's really hard. And you don't dare, mention anything about anything here like that. And if you're not a Christian, oh, God, don't tell them that either. Seriously. It's just cool.
I guess that probably the only liberal place would be New Orleans over there, huh?
Yeah. And, another thing, too, now that I'm thinking about it, that just kind of went past me a little bit, but you can tell I'm awake. I'm kind of awake. I have this stupid flare going on. But, no, my partner, she has a very visual job. She is very much in the public eye. And it's really hard. It's really difficult.
Oh.
We would think that people would have caught on by now, but I have such straight energy. Isn't that great? I really do. Call me a chameleon. Yeah, I am actually. Yeah, I call myself a chameleon. And nobody has ever asked me or whatever. If they ask me, I'll go ahead and I'll tell them. But nobody has ever asked me. And I think when I first met you, you had no idea either. So people were probably a little bit freaked. But no, my partner and I have been together since '96. I met her in '95 and hated her.
Really?
I hated her. Well, you know what? When you get stuck, and I don't know if anybody understands this or not, but let me just put it out there. When you get stuck on Straight Street, and you're not supposed to be there, you know who you are. When you're a kid, you know who you are. And a lot of them, a lot of people don't understand. But my aunt, my dad's only sister, is gay, so she kind of helped me. But in order to escape a certain situation that I was in that was very dangerous for me, I married at 16. Didn't want to be married, but, married at 16. Well, got stuck in that loop there, had 2 children. So I'm like, okay, whatever. And then I got buried somewhere underneath it all. Married a second time, and then even a third.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, my story is really something else. And anyway, I met my soulmate, actually. I was in a nightclub, and I was singing. And I used to sing with all kinds of Zydeco, country, whatever. I just like to sing. And I was there, and she was there, and she was staring at me from across the room. And my friend that was with me is like, real homophobic, and she's like, who's that across the room staring at you? And I said, how do you know she's not staring at you? She goes, well, I can't tell if it's male or female. That's what she said. She goes, I can't tell if it's male or female. And I said, I think it's female. That's what I said. We were both drinking, but I was, composed because I had to perform. But anyway, it was really funny because the more she stared, the more pissed off I got. And I was like, this is not happening to me. Please, not right now. I'm like, God, please have mercy. Not right now. I was engaged to this great guy, even though I wasn't in love with him. I was still engaged to this great guy, still living the straight life when I'm not at all. I'm not at all who I'm supposed to be at all. It was not me. And I knew it. And, a lot of us, I think, will choose to be miserable like that to fit in. And you don't have to. There's other ways around that. I found out, a little bit later. But I got so mad at her, though. I kind of, and I'm kind of a tough one. Not so much anymore, but I was then. I sauntered across the dance floor, and this is kind of funny. And you know what I said to her? And I don't know if you can say this on Blog Talk, but I'm going to say it anyway.
I got to make sure.
I told her, I said, what the fuck are you staring at? And she looked at me, and her head turned, and she looked at me again. And the friend that she was with, she got afraid because I was rough like that. I was like a redneck. I mean, seriously, that was kind of like my shield there. And she looked at me and she goes, I just love looking at beautiful things. I said, for your information, I'm not a thing. I said, I happen to be a woman. And I said, I'm about to take you out back and stomp a mud hole in your ass. That's what I told her. And she's like, oh, my God, you did not say that. I said, I damn sure did. I said, you know what, let's go dance. And I said, not on the dance floor either. That's how tough I had become, from all I had been through. And anyway, so she wouldn't stop. And then my ex-fiance, the jerk, he comes down. He was playing drums. He came down, and he puts his arm around her and takes her and buys her a drink. I'm like, oh, God, I know what this is about. You know what I mean? I was like, this is not happening. Yeah, this is not happening. So anyway, I broke it off with him, and then about a year later, she and I had a mutual best friend that I didn't even know that my best friend knew her. And I met with her, and she said, because she didn't even know. My best friend, who is gay, did not know I was. She was pissed when I came out because she had wanted to date me, but she didn't have the opportunity because, well, I wouldn't tell her. She never knew. I had that straight energy. So it was so funny. And the thing is that she mentioned to me after I confessed to her, she mentioned to me, she goes, if you're not with anybody, because there's kind of like a golden door, and if you don't know your way to find that door, you have to know somebody. It's so hidden. You have to know somebody to get in. Seriously, especially if you're coming in from the straight world. And so she opened the door, and she said, she named off all these women. And when she landed on this one name, I said, that's the one. Well, actually, it's the one that I met a year before. And it's my partner today, actually. Isn't that ironic?
Oh, what a beautiful story.
It took us a year to figure it out. And when we did, we called Michael Ray, who was my ex-fiance. He's like, oh, my God, you're kidding. I said, no, we're not kidding. We're not kidding. Absolutely the same person. And I just love her to death. I do. We've gone through hell together. She's had cancer, and she survived that. Well, I told her I would kill her if she didn't. I was really, working with her to get her to survive that, and it's very dangerous what she went through back then. But we've had a lot of ups and downs and stuff, really. My story's pretty rough. But, yeah, you got the story now on your show. Parts of it anyway.
Awesome. I feel honored.
But we're soulmates. And actually, I left after the cancer and everything was over. We had a parting of the ways. There were reasons for that, a lot of it on my part, but, there were reasons for it. I had another partner for 8 years, and I spent 8 years in Iowa, which I call, winter hell. Anyway, I spent 8 years up there, and I came back to Texas about 2 years ago. And you know what? She had never dated anybody or anything. She sat right there waiting for me. And she came to Texas to see me from Mississippi. And then last Christmas, about the 27th of December, I came back to Mississippi with her. That's what I'm doing here. So
wow,
that's my story. And we're waiting to go back to Texas now. So
that's definitely the clip notes. We got to have you on the show Sunday as a special guest, and we want to hear the whole story.
It's a huge story. I mean, it is. And you can't really make it lighthearted. There's a lot of really rough, places in our story. There really is. But it's a beautiful story, and you know what? If you didn't know it were true, you would think, oh man, that's a fairy tale. But it's not. It's not. And to pick her out after a year, I never knew her name. And to pick her out after a year, well, you know what I do anyway, but to hear her name, I knew it was it. I knew that was her name. I just knew it. And I didn't even know I was looking for her. I just knew that I was looking for my mate. And I put that out there. And Renee, mentioned her name. And I heard it, and I said, that's the one. She said, sure? I said, well, what, does she have 3 heads or something? And she said, no. She said, she doesn't have 3 heads. I said, well, what's the deal? And she goes, no. She goes, it's fine. She goes, you're sure, though? And I was like, yes, I'm sure. So she goes, okay. She goes, I'm going to call her and see what she thinks. The thing is, she had never had a partner. She had been out for 3 years, but she had never had a partner before, ever. And I had not had one in my adult life. All through growing up and everything, I always had partners. But I always had to keep it hidden, even in California, especially in California.
Wow. I hate to do this to you, Jewel, but, Kevin, Kevin's calling in. I don't know if he's calling in. Kevin, raise your hand if you want to talk. Poor Jewel going to have to put up with Kevin so early in the morning. I knew it. He wants to talk. Here he comes.
Okay.
Come on, Kevin. What you got for us?
Ew, I'm not talking to the host. Hey, Jewel, have you seen no, seriously, have you seen the documentary on gay bars in Mississippi?
You know what? I have Netflix, and I was going to order that one, and I didn't know. The ratings on it weren't very good, so I didn't know. So is it good?
It's actually very good. It's been shown on regular television as well.
I haven't seen it.
Logo shows it. Has shown it every now and then. But yes, it's actually really good. It's descriptive of actually how dangerous it is there.
It's very dangerous here. I mean, very. You know, if I do a show and talk about mine and Soft Shadow's story, I can't tell you guys exactly where we are because it's too dangerous. It really is.
Ew, now I'll talk to the host. No.
You're a mess this morning, Kevin. Oh, my God. He's awake.
No.
Wake up Comet over there.
I've had 3 sips of coffee, so.
Oh, I don't do coffee. That's why you're so awake.
Well, no, I'm not awake. That's the whole thing.
Well,
Kevin, I
guess
cannot believe you're up.
You can what?
I cannot believe you're up this early.
You know, it was an interesting night. It's been an interesting few days. So, yeah. But the reason I called in is because, see, I'll put out a secret. Jewel told me already.
It's true. I did tell him, but not on the air.
Right. She sent it via email and told me that I was to keep my mouth shut or she would come find me.
I did not say that. You're so bad. No, I didn't.
She was going to pound you into a mud puddle?
She was going to sick her people on me.
Oh, my God.
She was going to sick her people on me. But no.
Too funny.
And I was very glad to hear that she actually called and told it on your show, Tom. It was very...
I didn't even know I was going to tell it, y'all. I'm serious. I didn't know I was going to tell it.
There you go. And when you did, I was like, oh, you got to know about that documentary out of Mississippi. What was the first thing I thought of when you told me about it?
Well, I'm honored. That's all I got to say. I am so honored because, Jewel, you're I mean, on Blog Talk Radio, you're just a fixture, you know, a trophy on the wall. You're really someone special over here on Blog Talk Radio, and I feel very honored.
Well, I don't know how special we're going to be after this happens, but it's okay. This is who I am. You know, this is who I am, and if they, you know, can't handle it, well, then they don't have to come to the shows. You know what I mean?
If they can't handle it, send them to me. I'll whoop the ass. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't say that.
I have 2 shows, actually, y'all. I have Angelic Althea, which is what I came in with first, and then I have ISI. So we do the creepy stuff on ISI, you know what I mean? We have the creepy stuff over there, and we have the angels on the other part of it. So split personality, just call me Sybil.
Hey, Jewel?
Yeah?
I would like to call you when you're done here. Do you have time?
Sure.
Okay. I need your phone number, though. Put it on the airwaves so everybody can have your phone number.
Oh, yeah, right.
Oh, are you crazy? Oh, my God, that is so not happening. No, you know what? Shoot me a talk email, and I'll email it back to you. Seriously, I'm not putting there's no way. No.
No. Will you send it? Because I don't think I have your email either. Will you send it through Blog Talk? Is that cool?
Yeah. Go. You're a friend of mine. Go on Blog Talk. You know, well, you're on Blog Talk, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
just look at your people, you know, for sending a message, and then, you know, click on Jewel of the South.
Right. Okay, I'll send you, yeah. Oh, yeah, okay.
Just shoot me an email, and then I'll send you back.
Yeah, okay. So I got to talk to you about something completely different.
Okay.
Tom.
Yes.
Woohoo! Party on. Anyway, great show the other night. I don't know how many people knew you were going to be on there, or even to know to go and listen. Did you tell them about the round table?
I haven't mentioned it, but I did enjoy that show the other night. That was an awesome show.
See, how are you going to not tell people about times you're invited on other people's shows as a guest? You should tell your people.
That was the first time.
Well, you should tell your people. Let them go. I don't even remember. Who was it? Real Talk, Real Women?
Yeah, real talk, real woman. Yeah.
Tom was the only man in the room.
Oh, bull, you were there.
That doesn't mean I was a man.
I knew that was coming. I knew it was.
Yeah, we didn't plan to set that up ahead of time.
I try. I got to be funny every now and then. See, you can tell I'm not awake. This other accent's going out.
Yeah, right. Well, I just got my 60-second warning, folks.
Everybody have a
the
wonderful
infamous
day.
blog talk voice.
Yes.
Yeah, the
I need to change that to like Chinese accented man. It'd be a good thing. All right. Talk to y'all later.
Yeah. Have a great day, Kevin.
I'm going to. Thanks for taking my call.
Jewel, thank you. And you know,
Welcome,
if you want to come on my Sunday show, I'm booked the next 2 Sundays, but you're welcome. You know,
Well, set it up.
Okay.
Set it up, and I'll come on.
I'll send you a message, and we'll talk about this.
Okay, hon.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'll talk to you later. Bye, everybody.
Yeah, that was definitely one of those wow moments when Jewel called in and came out that day. It was totally unsuspecting. I was really caught off guard on that one, but it was awesome. It was very awesome. And moments like that are moments to be cherished. Because the fact that you just have to understand who Jewel was and the amount of people that come to her show, for her to come out and say that publicly was very brave of her. Very, very, very brave of her, and it was an honor to have her do so on Gay Talk Radio. Thank you, Jewel. She's a very sweet person, very dear. We have changed lives through our work on Gay Talk Radio. You know, when I first started, I once said, that if I just made a difference in one life, I would feel very pleased. But the fact is that I know of several instances where we had made a difference in people's lives. And that one you just heard with Jewel coming out on the show was one example right there. Because for people to stand up and make such a statement like that, which she probably lost some clients because of that, so it's a sacrifice. It's a sacrifice, but like we always say around here, there's 2 roads in life. There's the right road and the easy road. Most of us want to be on the right road. So I think it's very important that we all follow the same path. Yeah. And speaking of paths, I shared in the beginning of I think it was my 2nd or 3rd show, that I did a special of my story. It's a 1-hour clip. Actually, it's about 52 minutes or so of my story. The first half of my life, people wanted to know a little bit more about me. So I went ahead and put a lot of it out there. And I got so much positive feedback from it that I even turned it into a video. So you're fixing to hear it right now. The 52 minutes of my personal story, the first half of my life that I told in the very beginnings of Gay Talk Radio. Since Father was on a tour of duty away from home, Mother drove herself to the hospital. I was born on May 4th, 1956 in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Afterwards, a nurse told my mother that women should be more like her. Mother told the nurse in no uncertain terms, "Bullshit, the husband should be by the wife's side." My father was a military officer. He served in 3 wars and retired from the military in 1969 as a lieutenant colonel. He was my Superman, my hero, and my source of strength. I've been told more than once in my life that I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth. Of course, that's a nice way of saying I was a spoiled brat. I feel blessed to have had a good family life and upbringing. I remember my first feelings of being gay. My cousin and I were changing clothes in a changing room at a public swimming pool. I was around 8 years old. I don't remember the words, but I said something to let him know I found him attractive. His reply was something like, "What are you, a faggot?" I never mentioned it again. Needless to say, I never acted on my feelings towards him. Years later, around the age of 12 or so, I would meet another young man whom I was interested in. We played around, in a sexual sense, for many years. We were kids, you know. It was more of a young boy's experimenting type situation. His parents and mine were friends, so we got to see each other quite often, but it never developed into anything more than child's play. One day he would marry, and on several occasions refused to even speak with me. In fact, him and I have never spoken since the time when we were kids, even though there have been several opportunities. You see, even after he was married and got on with his life, I would often see his parents when they visited my parents. His father would often call his son on the phone and try to hand the phone to me so his son and I could talk. After all, we were best buddies. But his son always had an excuse of some sort to get out of talking to me. In high school, there was another person I was interested in, but I was so wrapped up in being a jock that I dismissed it. I didn't want to make any more mistakes, and I sure didn't want to disappoint my parents, so I repressed my sexuality and my sexual urges. This is one reason why I'm so glad to see a new generation of GLBTQ community members coming out at an early age. This stage of life is part of the development stage, and it's important. It's wrong for society and family to browbeat us to the point where we must repress our sexuality and sexual urges. Our community is often judged by our sexuality, even though we're much more than our sexuality. Many of our opponents are quick to note our sexual frequency and habits. So at this point, I feel compelled to mention that many of us feel forced to repress our sexuality due to a judging and damning society. Of course, those who are judging and damning, in most cases, do not repress their sexuality for many long years, so they have no way of knowing the pain and suffering involved. Those who are judging and damning don't know what it feels like to grow up in a world constantly telling you that you are sick, wrong-headed, and bound for hell. Of course, those who are judging and damning don't feel the fear these children wake up with every morning, afraid to speak such things to anyone. I'm here to tell you, these words, opinions, and actions have real-world consequences. Consequences like increased suicide rate, STD rate, and low self-esteem. Of course, if you ask those who are judging and damning, those are our fault, not theirs. Click sarcastic mode on. It couldn't have anything to do with all the negative feelings heaped upon our community by those who are judging and damning us when we are most vulnerable. Click sarcastic mode off. After high school, I went to college in Dallas, Texas. Being away from home allowed me to explore my sexuality without fear. I ended up dropping out of college and took on a job as a salesman at a piano and organ retail shop. You see, from the age of 4 years old to 13 years old, I had weekly piano lessons in classical piano. So I was fairly accomplished in piano and organ, and I didn't have any problem at all getting a job there. During that time, I became involved with a very handsome young man with beautiful long flowing hair. He was one of the quiet type guys, you know, so I really often wondered where he was coming from and stuff. He just wasn't vocal. But when we got in bed, he wasn't so quiet and shy. But he moved into my apartment with me. I was very content and very happy, but I was still very confused. And I was only 18 at the time. being young and ignorant of sales, I didn't understand about the varying pay rates. You know, you have good times in sales and you have dry times. And when the dry times came, since I was living paycheck to paycheck, I was forced to return home. Unfortunately and begrudgingly leaving the person I had become so fond of. To this day, I regret that action, primarily because I broke his heart. Looking back on it, I didn't think I felt love for him. But because of all this repression and mixture and confusion and everything else that's mostly due because of society and family, I didn't know. You know, it could have been different if it wasn't for all that weight I had on my shoulders from all the crap. So by the time I realized he loved me so much, it was too late. We could have tried other options, but it was too late. I had already broke his heart. We were very young, and I think both of us felt we were partaking of the forbidden fruit. Which further illustrates the points I was making previously and what I just said. If we had not been told this type of relationship was wrong and forbidden, it's quite possible him and I would still be together to this very day. But after all, it was 1975. We had grown up in a society that damned us and damned our love. My parents talked me into going into the Air Force. I didn't want to, but it's what they wanted. Thankfully, back then they had what was called the contract system, where they guaranteed you a particular job. My particular job was military police officer, and it was in the contract. However, once I got in, they told me I couldn't do that because I wore glasses. I didn't have 20/20 vision. They attempted to talk me into becoming a security police officer, told me it was the same thing. I knew better, so I opted to get out. After 18 days of service, I received an honorable discharge. 18 days, honorable discharge. After that is when I fell in love, head over heels, with a guy who would break my heart. I guess Lady Karma was working her magic, because the guy told me I didn't know what love was and he wasn't interested in pursuing a relationship with me. It broke my heart. I attempted suicide on New Year's Eve by taking approximately 30 downers. I was in a coma for 4 or 5 days. During my coma, I had an out-of-body experience, at which time I floated out of my body, saw my body laying in the hospital bed. Then my body did a 180, and I saw the ceiling of the building. I went through the ceiling and up and up and up and up and up until I saw this light. It's just a light all around me, light. That's about all I remember, except that I was sent back because it wasn't my time, and I feel I was sent back for a purpose. I don't know what that purpose is, and I've been told I'm not supposed to know. My mother says during that time when I was in a coma or whatever, a preacher read me my last rites. That same preacher exited the room and advised my parents, who were waiting outside, that I had died. Mother says that's the only time she ever saw my father cry. After some time, I ended up becoming a police dispatcher through this girl I knew. Her father was on the city council. After doing that for a while, I joined the reserve police officer pool and eventually became a full-fledged patrolman. My primary concern was the ability to help people. I received great rewards from within myself by helping others, in many cases, at a time when it was most needed. I'll never forget the time I was on patrol and decided to check a off-the-beaten-path gravel road. I came upon a car with all the lights off and all the windows fogged up. Much to my surprise, I discovered 2 handsome young men in the back seat, totally naked, kissing and caressing. They were students at the local high school. Much to their surprise, I tapped on the car window. They stepped out. They were very scared, so much so their erection ceased to exist almost immediately. First words out of my mouth were, "Get dressed." They had not uttered a single word, and you could see the fear in their eyes. I felt really bad, but I knew they needed a life lesson. I was only 21, and they were in their late teens, so I took a friendly tone. I explained to them it was their lucky night. I told them if any other police officer had located them that they would be in very bad trouble. I advised them it could follow them for the rest of their lives, undoubtedly bringing their families into this situation. Additionally, I advised them their actions were illegal and unsafe. I wanted them to understand I was concerned for their safety and well-being, not to mention the embarrassment. I asked them for their identification. At one point, one of the boys asked me why I was bothering them. Of course, I snapped at him, asking if he wanted me to call his parents right now. Needless to say, he shut up and listened. After making sure my point was clear and concise, I released them and sent them on their way. I used to spend most of my time patrolling the neighborhoods. While most of the officers were busy looking for speeders, I spent my time talking with the community, speaking with parents, kids, and teens, letting them know someone cared about them. Evidently, some of the kids had heard about the incident on the gravel road, because one day I had one of them ask me if I was gay. Of course, I laughed it off, but inside I felt a very warm feeling. Just the mere fact a high school kid could feel that comfortable asking me, a police officer, such a question made me feel like my mission was accomplished. In fact, there was a time when two local teens got into a fight. There was a large group surrounding them, many with baseball bats, sticks, and other implements of harm. I would guesstimate 50 to 80 kids in the crowd. I was the first officer to arrive on the scene. I knew most of the kids. I immediately jumped out of my patrol vehicle. I didn't have a weapon with me, except for my sidearm. And I walked right into the middle. I didn't grab my sidearm, it was holstered. I walked into the middle of the crowd, and I stopped the fight. When the group saw me, they all dropped their weapons. I was able to separate the two boys about the time a whole bunch of other police cars arrived. The chief of police was very upset with me for wading into that crowd of teens. He was concerned for my safety. I tried to explain to him that I had a rapport with them, but it fell on deaf ears. After almost 3 years in that line of work, I was unfairly passed over for promotion, and I quit. Afterwards, I became a mechanic. Thanks to the teachings of my father, I was very mechanically inclined. I ended up managing a service center with 6 mechanics working for me. During this time, my early 20s, I met an elderly gay man. He worked at a radiator shop next door to the garage I worked in. I guess he had suspicions I was gay, and spoke with me quite a bit. He used to bring me like bowls of soup and sandwiches, and he was just a sweet old man. We became friends, and he would take me to gay parties and stuff. He knew a lot of people in the gay community. He told me about gay bars. I didn't know there was such a thing as gay bars. I'll never forget the first time I went to a gay bar. I thought I had died and gone to heaven. Men were dancing with men, and they even kissed. Right there in a public bar. Talk about shock and awe. I think I went to a gay bar every night after that night. At work, I was approached by a straight man who wished to open his own garage. He wanted me to be the mechanic and manager, but didn't know I was gay. I went ahead with it. We opened a garage across the street from a gay bar. One day he saw me go to the gay bar for a drink, and he asked me if I knew what kind of bar that was. I told him I was quite aware what kind of bar it was. It wasn't long after that I started dating a guy who had some training in bookkeeping. So he started coming to work with me. Of course, we were sleeping together every night. He was staying with me, taking me and introduced me to his parents. So I didn't have any problem taking him to work with me. And he started doing bookkeeping. Turned out my partner was trying to rob me blind. Needless to say, the business didn't work out. Unfortunately, the relationship didn't work out either. It wasn't his fault. Not at all. If I had it all to do over again, it probably would have worked out because he was a great guy and very attractive. But I had only been out of the closet for a few months. I had many years of sexual frustration inside of me, and I honestly didn't feel I could commit to a relationship at that time. So I ended up breaking another heart. But I was honest, and I didn't cheat. The business fell apart, but I didn't really care. I was busy being a slut. I was busy being a slut and enjoying every minute of it. I was still going to the gay bar every day. You see, I had always considered myself unattractive, in fact, ugly. When I started going to gay bars, guys were all over me. Obviously, my opinion of myself changed. After so many years of feeling so badly about myself, it was so wonderful to feel good about myself. It was an experience I never had before. Having gone through this, I know for a fact it is wrong for any youngster to have such feelings of negativity, most likely thrust upon them by family or society. I found one bar. Hold on a second. Let me stop right here a second, because this isn't written down. I just got to insert this, because, when all this negativity is put upon us, you just heard me tell you, I thought I was ugly. I thought I was the homeliest guy on the face of this planet. And it turns out I was actually very attractive. That's what all the negativity does. You people out there pushing all this hatred on our community, and then you turn around and you tell us, look at what they do, look at what they are, blah, blah, blah. It's your fault. If we were brought up, loved, appreciated, it'd be different. Anyway, I found one bar I liked over all the others, and I became like family there. It wasn't long before I started working at the bar, and before long I became the bar manager. During this time of my life was when I turned around 26. That's when I came out to my family. I remember when I told my mother and father I was gay, they were both speechless. It was a short conversation. The topic didn't come up again for some time until one day my mother said, I can't imagine what two men do in bed together, and I don't want to know. In time, I would learn my father was accepting, but my mother was furious. I'm not sure about other people, but when I was growing up, I had a picture in my mind of the perfect guy. Well, after working in a gay bar for a little over a year, my Adonis came walking through the door one evening. Since I had sowed a lot of my wild oats for over a year, I was ready to settle down. My Adonis was a friend of the DJ I had recently hired, and they went over to the DJ booth. It was his first night working. We had a reel-to-reel tape player, and I was playing music because I wasn't a DJ or anyone on the clock yet. Next thing you know, music stopped. I went running over to the DJ booth. When I got to the DJ booth, the reel-to-reel tape had unwound. I knew that doesn't happen all by itself, but I figured someone just bumped up against it accidentally or something. But bottom line is, it was okay with me because it provided me a way to meet Mr. Adonis. I would later learn that Mr. Adonis had purposely stopped the tape so that he could meet me. He stayed the whole night at the bar in the DJ booth with the DJ. Even his mother came to the bar. They had a little group there. They were having a great time, all in support of their friend, the DJ. I stayed also, and I bought Mr. Adonis many free drinks throughout the night. I think I bought their whole group free drinks for the whole night. I went home with Mr. Adonis that evening and moved in with him the next day. We became lovers and spent every night together from that day forward. My mother didn't help the situation. In fact, one time, while I was away at work, she came over to the house and she asked Adonis, "Are you boys having fun playing house?" When Mother called me one day, the holidays were growing near. She called me to tell me, "Tom, you're welcome to join the family during the holidays, but your boyfriend isn't." My response was, "Neither of us will be attending." It would be 2 years of missed holidays before we were both welcome. After almost 3 years with Adonis, I came home from work one day and found a woman in our bed, passed out. There were several empty bodies of champagne all around the bed. I told him I wanted to break up. He told me no. To this day, I regret my next action. Remember the DJ? He was Adonis's best friend. I went and had sex with the DJ. Mr. Adonis and I broke up shortly thereafter. He married the woman that was drunk in our bed. He returned to me a couple months later, but I told him no thank you. During my time with Adonis, I still worked at the gay bar. Of course, I had many men ask me to sleep with them, but I was in a monogamous relationship, and I told them, "Sorry, but I can't do that." I remember one in particular. His name was Scott. I told him the same thing I told the others. I showed him my ring, and I said I was faithful to my lover. This is another decision I would one day regret. At the gay bar, I had designed and installed the sound system, the light show. I worked on it. We had to remodel it. I went in there. He didn't have to hire no laborers. We all went in there and helped. And I worked as a bartender during the daytime on happy hour. My happy hour was the most popular happy hour in the city. Of course, this was the early 80s, and AIDS had not yet reared its ugly head in San Antonio, Texas. Not long after Adonis and I broke up, the bar owner and I had a falling out. I felt unappreciated after having done so much for the bar. Also, he had recently hired a friend of his, and he took his friend's side instead of taking my side on an issue we had. My next job was at a medical laboratory as a medical courier, and that went well for several years, until I figured out my boss was a closet case and was interested in me. But he didn't want a relationship. He just wanted to play around, not commit. And I was insulted. You see, it was a gay friend of mine who got me the job, so evidently the boss already knew I was gay. Of course, I was clueless. Of course, during this time, I was still visiting the gay bar, although not daily, like I once did. Eventually, I got over being angry with my previous boss, the bar owner, and I started to visit his bar once in a while. On one of those visits, I ran into Scott again. The minute he saw me walk in the door, he yelled out my name. He was in the middle of a conversation with some girls. He was sitting with them. They were having a good old time. And he just stopped in mid-sentence and yelled out my name. Of course, I remembered his name as well. Got me a drink and went over and sat with him. And funny how by the time I got my drink and got over there wasn't no one there but him. By this time, AIDS was a real threat in San Antonio. So we did go home together, but he was very drunk. We slept together, but we didn't have sex. We would spend every night together from that day forward until, well, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I ended up quitting the job at the medical laboratory and went back to work at the bar, round two. The bartenders I had worked with previously were either dead or dying. The owner's lover was dead. Many friends had died. Our world wasn't the happy little carefree place it once was. The bar business wasn't doing well, and the owner had hopes I could help reinvigorate it. Since I had worked at the medical lab, I had fairly good knowledge of medical testing procedures and processes, so I requested Scott and I both get tested. Of course, because, I'm all about monogamous relationships, and I don't like safe sex. And, if I'm with someone, we get tested, we got a clean bill of health, and we're both monogamous, there should be no reason to practice safe sex. I realize that's a risk if anyone's unfaithful, but gotta live life. Of course, I knew I was negative, but Scott wasn't so lucky. I'll never forget the day he found out. I was in our bedroom, messing around with the computer. I heard the phone ring. Scott answered it in the other room. Next thing I know, Scott was crawling into the bedroom on all fours, crying his eyes out and begging me not to leave him. I immediately stopped what I was doing, ran to him, hugged him, and told him I would not leave him. He told me the phone call was from the doctor's office, and they told him he was HIV positive. The next 15 months were hell on earth. I quit my job so I could be by Scott's side as much as possible. Thankfully, his doctor was compassionate, and Scott had told the doctor that I was to be treated as family. The doctor placed an order on his chart and advised the hospital of this. I'm thankful for that. It caused many problems for them at the hospital. Scott didn't have a private room, and often the other patients would request a different room. It appears some of them didn't appreciate me holding Scott's hand, hugging him, caressing him, kissing him, etc. During those 15 months, he spent 12 of them in the hospital. So much of our time together was spent in the hospital. We used to leave the hospital and go have picnics. We'd go to a park, a field, wherever. Hospital got worried. You see, they were responsible for him because he was an admitted patient, and they didn't like us leaving the hospital grounds. Next thing you know, Scott had Maggie. That's what Scott called his IV pole. Even though we didn't leave the grounds as often, we would still leave once in a while. You see, we had a VW van at the time, so it wasn't any problem. We'd just prop Maggie up behind the seats. One day I bought a kite on my way to the hospital. We flew the kite outside the whole afternoon. His doctor drove by us and honked her horn when she was leaving. The next day when she was making her rounds and came into his room, she had tears in her eyes. She said, I just wanted to come out there with you guys and fly that kite. During one of my visits, Scott shocked me with some news. He told me a story about a time before we had met. How he was an alcoholic and experienced frequent blackouts. The story was, one morning he woke up with a man in bed next to him, and the man was crying. When he asked the man why he was crying, the man told him, "We had sex last night, and I have full-blown AIDS." Scott asked if it had been safe sex. The man shook his head to indicate no. Scott was worried I would be upset, but after the many spinal taps, the many amphotericin and intravenous chemical drips, the central lines inserted in his chest, the severe weight loss, the bronchoscopies, the nurse who had contracted AIDS by sticking herself with a needle she had removed from Scott, well, that news about how he got the disease just didn't seem so important. During the entire time, Scott continued contact with his ex-lover. In fact, he worked for him in a floral shop. Scott was very talented in that area. In fact, when the Pope came to town, Scott was requested to make the floral arrangements. That was prior to him and I meeting the second time. For clarity, I should mention, Scott asked me if it was okay for him to continue working for his ex-lover. Of course, I wasn't going to deny him anything. Scott was such a beautiful soul, and I trusted him. You know, one day I came home from work, and Scott was in the kitchen. I walked in, and I gave him a kiss, and he looked at me with this huge grin. I knew something was up. He said, "Well?" I didn't know what he was talking about. He went running into the living room, and I followed. All of a sudden, he looked worried until he looked behind the TV stand. Then he started hitting his legs and saying, "Come here, come here." All of a sudden, the most beautiful golden retriever appeared from behind there. I instantly fell in love. I hugged Scott, and then I hugged the dog. I think we did a group hug. We named him Rusty. I think it was Scott's way of telling me that maybe he wouldn't be able to be with me forever, but Rusty would. You see, folks, it was 1990. 1990, and back then HIV was considered a terminal illness. But that doesn't mean Scott had given up. He was in denial until the day he died. He put up the best fight he could. We never discussed death. Rusty had come from an abused home where there were two big Rottweilers, and they received all the attention. Rusty was lucky to get food. In fact, when I saw him the first time, you could see his rib cage. Believe me when I tell you, that dog loved me like no other animal had or has to this day. He had complete trust in me. He was very protective, and he would cry if he couldn't be near me. Even though the first 6 months of Rusty's life weren't so great, we made up for that in a big way. I'll never forget the time we went to a river. Even though Rusty was an excellent swimmer, he really didn't like the water that much. Scott and I went out to the middle of a low river. There was these ruts there on the river bottom, and we would lay in those little ruts, and the water would run over our back and give you a wonderful natural massage. It felt so good. The sun would hit you. It was nice. Rusty was crying on the riverbank. He wouldn't come out there. So I went and got him. I picked him up. I guess he weighed around 60 pounds or so. You know, golden retrievers are pretty good size. So I carried him out there. I laid him on his back next to me in the rut next to me. He didn't move. He just put his legs up and enjoyed having that water running over his body. Just doing the same thing Scott and I was doing. And Scott looked over and he started laughing so hard. He said, "That dog trusts you so much, he'll do anything." So the three of us laid there for a while, soaking up the sun and getting a wonderful natural massage. There was another time we went to the ocean. Scott and I swam out a ways. Rusty was on the beach, and again he started crying. I called him. He swam out. He was fighting the small waves. He was scared. Oh, he was scared. But he kept coming. He was whimpering really big time. But he made it out there. Problem was we were out there where we couldn't touch bottom. Then he wanted me to hold him. That was not a good deal. So we started going towards shore. I was bobbing up and down, but I kept Rusty's head above the water. These non-hospital times were short-lived, so we tried to make the best of them. Scott had never been out of Texas, so I corrected that. We had that VW event. It was perfect. Scott could sleep while I drove. We went to Carlsbad Caverns in New Mexico. But I was slowly becoming a basket case. In the last couple months of Scott's life, his mother stepped in to care for him. He went to stay at his ex-lover's house, and his mother moved in there and stayed there as well. Of course, I was welcome there, but I never went there due to the bad blood between his ex-lover and me. You see, at one point during Scott and I's relationship, we stopped having sex. I was worried about catching AIDS. We actually talked to the doctor about it. It seems Scott went and had sex with his ex-lover, who came and told me about it the next day. I called Scott on the phone and told him, if you want to be with your ex-lover, all you have to do is tell me, and we can break up. Scott came right home. I'll never know why, but his ex-lover returned to the house. I don't know if he was coming back to tell me it was a lie. I don't know if he was coming back to apologize. I don't know. I never asked, and I was never told. Scott ran outside and beat the hell out of his ex-lover in the front yard. There was a time Scott and I were driving down the highway. We'd gone out into the country. We did a little walk and picked up some rocks, maybe thinking they were geodes and stuff, blah, blah, blah. On the way back, we got into a bit of an argument. In my anger, I told him, well, if you didn't have this damn disease. Scott grabbed one of the rocks and he hit me in the head. I pulled over. He got out. I felt blood running down my head. No biggie. I was fine. He had already gotten out of the vehicle, wouldn't get back in, so I followed behind him on the shoulder until he finally got back in. He felt bad about hitting me and freaked out a bit, especially when he saw me bleeding. But I was okay. We went home. I told him I deserved to be hit for my insensitive comment. Scott suffered a stroke towards the end. He developed dementia. He was losing his vision. Needless to say, he was kind of out of it. I wasn't there when he died, but I felt it. Scott's mother called me many weeks after the funeral and told me, Scott died on your birthday. I told her I felt it the day he died, and I told her what day it was. And it wasn't my birthday. But you know what? It doesn't matter. Because the fact of the matter was that he held on until that day. And he did so because he thought it was my birthday. He told his mother he was dying on my birthday because he loved me so much. Scott died March 3rd, 1991. I was born on May 4th. To this day, I feel Scott was my only true soulmate. Once in a while I think, what if I had gotten together with him the first time he approached me at the bar? What if I wasn't with Adonis at that time? Would Scott still be alive? Would we have lived happily ever after? Those are questions I'll never have answers to. questions which I cannot dwell on, for I am alive. Life is for the living, and I must live my life. Scott's mother and I still speak. She considers me her son, and I'm grateful for that. You see, it wasn't her that kept me from the funeral. It was Scott's ex-lover. Scott's family was very poor. Scott's ex-lover wasn't, and he paid for it all. Of course, years later, Scott's mother had Scott's body moved closer to her. You can imagine now she no longer speaks with the ex-lover. After Scott died, I went to a deep, dark depression for 3 years. I couldn't work, and many times I had no electricity or water in my home. Those were the darkest days of my life. During that time, many thought I had AIDS. I got very thin, obviously. I didn't have any money. I didn't eat much. I don't know how much weight I lost. I think I went from 180 pounds to 140. I don't know. Maybe less. I have no idea. Even my mother asked me, "Would you tell me if you had AIDS?" Finally, one day I decided it was time to let go. Remember the kite I was telling you about earlier? Well, I went out to the storage shed and I grabbed that kite. It got me a couple rolls of string, I don't know, about 1,000 feet worth. I took a long drive out into the country. I went to a place where Scott and I used to go have picnics. I put the kite up in the air and I let all the string out. After a long emotional period of time, I cut the string and I let the kite go. It was the only way I could let go. I assumed since I didn't get to attend the funeral, I never got to say goodbye. So releasing the kite was what worked for me. But a sweet surprise awaited me a few weeks later when I returned to that spot. It was a spot I went to before I met Scott, and it's a spot I went to after I met Scott. I don't live in Texas anymore, so I don't go there anymore, but until I did, I often went to that place. But it was a few weeks after I had released the kite, and I went back there, and I was standing on top of that hill where I released that kite, looking down over the beautiful valley below. To my amazement, across the street, maybe only 100 feet from where I was standing, there was the kite, stuck in a tree. I walked down there. I climbed up that tree. I got the kite back. That kite was torn up to shreds. It was like big, long cuts and everything. I mean, I don't know how that kite ended up. I watched it go and go and go. After I cut it, I watched it go. And there it was, right across the street from where I let it go. It would never fly again, but I kept it. For some reason, it was symbolic. It was a symbol of Scott coming back to me, or letting me know he never left. I don't know. I've never felt his presence, or never felt he's spoken to me, but somehow I feel he is with me, or at least was telling me it's all okay. No matter what it was a gift and a miracle. Anyhow, shortly after releasing the kite, I snapped out of my depression, and I worked several menial jobs here and there. I ended up meeting another guy, but when it came time to let's get tested, he refused. Of course, I refused having anything other than safe sex with him since he wouldn't get tested. But, we were boyfriends. He moved in with me. The odd thing about it is, he went to high school with Scott. I didn't know that when we met. It came out after the fact. And I just think that's a very strange coincidence. Anyhow, that relationship only lasted a few months. And then he died a very fast AIDS-related death. I went and visited him a couple times in the hospital. And he told me once, he said, well, you were there every day for Scott. And I told him, I'm sorry, I'm not going through that again. Rusty missed Scott too. But we still had each other. I loved Rusty so much. And he brought so many pleasant memories back. Remember, I was very poor. I never did take Rusty to get him spayed or neutered, whatever it is you do to a male dog. Little did I know, golden retrievers are the definition of horn dogs. Rusty would jump over my 3-foot chain link fence every night, I think. Some of the neighbors had beautiful pups. Most of them appreciated, and one even offered me one of the pups. But one of the neighbors didn't like Rusty. In fact, he didn't like any dogs. One morning, Rusty was listless in the front yard. He was just laying there, like he couldn't even lift his head. He just looked at me with those eyes. I rushed him to the vet, but it was too late. He had been poisoned. Of course, I feel it was the hateful neighbor, but I have no proof. So I can only hope Rusty and Scott are having a great time together somewhere. Well, folks, that's about all I can get through. There's much more to my story, but I'm going to stop here. I can't promise more, but we shall see. Much love to all. So now you know more about me than you ever wanted to know. Hope you enjoyed my story there. Hope you'll enjoy some of the very special pieces of some very special moments that we're going to share with you from here on Gay Talk Radio. Often I would put together special singular pieces that I would embed into a show. A lot of that stuff you're going to hear this week, separate, outside of this show, as part of the pledge drive. And a couple of those are coming up in the next sound clip. It's a very special clip I did based on the Martin Luther King I Have a Dream speech. And then I'm going to put a couple clips in there from callers. We had a caller named Paul who befriended us back in those days. He was around quite a bit for a while, and I got a couple calls from him in there that you might bring a smile to your face. Hope you enjoy it. Let's try a little exercise. I want you to take a moment to relax. Take a few deep breaths and clear your mind. You may even want to close your eyes. Of course, this is only if you're not performing a task where this could possibly prove dangerous. Now transport your mind to 1963. Picture yourself in the city of Washington, D.C. Picture yourself standing in front of the Lincoln Memorial. Picture yourself gazing upon the statue of Abraham Lincoln, proudly sitting there in all of his majestic glory. Do you now realize there's a large crowd of people gathering to hear another great man speak? As he begins to speak, you are fixated on his words.
I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, and every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is a faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning, "My country, 'tis of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when this happens, and when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
I shouldn't have to say who that was, but just in case there is someone who may not know, that was the last 5 minutes of the late, great Martin Luther King Jr. making his I Have a Dream speech. He spoke those words in August of 1963 in front of the Lincoln Memorial. Martin Luther King Jr. was a wonderful man with a gift and a vision. I am a gay white man, and I personally consider Martin Luther King Jr. a modern-day prophet. As a gay white man, I also greatly admire his wife, Coretta Scott King. May they both rest in peace. They both considered the plight of our human family of utmost importance. Neither of them cared about a person's race, sexuality, nationality, or religion. They both knew that all of God's children needed to come together in the greater power of love. They both knew that all of God's children needed to cast aside their differences, not only their differences of race, sexuality, nationality, or religion, but also their differences of opinion. The King's vision is everlasting. These endearing and enduring visions are essentially written in stone. If the human family expects to flourish on this earth, we need to hold these visions near and dear to our hearts. Perception is a roadblock on the path to freedom. We need to let loose our perceptions of others. We need to realize our job on this earth is to love our fellow human family members. If the Kings can actually see America today, surely tears are running down their cheeks. Tears of sadness, tears of despair, and tears of confusion. Confused why the human family has so easily cast aside the King's message, which the Kings paid for so dearly. Indeed, Martin Luther King Jr. paid the ultimate price. Martin Luther King Jr. was murdered trying to bring all of God's children together. Black men, white men, Jews, Gentiles, Protestants, Catholics, and even though he didn't say it in the speech, even gays and straights. It is a fact that members of every one of these groups were part of the civil rights movement. We, the human family, have dishonored Martin Luther King Jr. and should all bow our heads in shame. We, the human family, have shamed the prophet Martin Luther King Jr. We, the human family, have and continue to dismiss his sacrifice, his efforts, his visions, and his love. Is this what our human family has become? We accuse others of selfishness and greed. Is it not selfish of us to dismiss loving our fellow human family member due to our perceptions of that fellow family member? Do these perceptions not isolate us? Perceptions and isolation are roadblocks to unity. They are indeed roadblocks on the path towards freedom and equality for all members of our human family. Let's look for a moment at the word faggot. An age-old definition of the word is a bundle of sticks that are bound together by two bands. A faggot is commonly used as a fire starter. If one were to remove the bands, they would discover it's very easy to break each stick individually. However, try to break the bundle as a whole, and you will find it much more difficult, perhaps even impossible without assistance of a tool. Likewise, when our human family comes together as a whole, we become an unbreakable force. We are all aware of a modern-day use of the word faggot. As a gay white man, I'm here to tell you this is one faggot that has no plans to be silent. In fact, this faggot plans to start many fires. Fires to burn out indifference in our human family. Fires to burn wide and far in effort to bring equality for all, until, like the late, great Martin Luther King Jr. so appropriately proclaimed 45 years ago,
when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are